Welcome to Talk Design Podcast, the space where creativity meets conversation. I'm Adrian Ramsey, your host, and as someone deeply entrenched in the world of design, I'm thrilled to introduce you to the minds that inspire me in the hope that they will spark something special within you too. From a design past crafting women's swimwear to pushing the boundaries of performance sportswear, from mountaineering to international yachting, to implementing systematic innovation solutions that transcend boundaries in aerospace industry. My heart remains rooted in architecture, and exploring the emotional tapestry woven by built spaces is my fascination. My journey in design has been what can only be described as a life of design. I want to thank you for lending me your ears. I'm eager to embark on this next episode together. And for those of you who prefer to watch and listen, you can catch this episode at YouTube. That's youtube.com/@TalkDesignPodcast. My guest on Talk Design today is Kristina LoMonaco. Now, Kristina and I go way back. I say that almost a year ago, she came on the podcast. And at that time, she had moved from New York to London, and she was running her interior design practice in both places. So if you want to listen to the transformation, just the life journey of this kind of year, April the 4th, 2023 was when we released the last podcast together. Since that time, a lot of things have happened. Your life has been full, and it's changed directions and all kinds of wonderful things, as well as like scary things. So welcome back to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
I'm so happy to be back on. This is fun, and you're always so wonderful. So I'm excited to share what's been going on the last year or so.
Yeah, I know. Well, one of the things I was most excited about was when we recorded last time, I said, I've got to introduce you to this person and da 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 da. And so another podcast like guest who is one of these fabulous people as well. And I went, you're both in London, you both lived in America, and I think I should like hook you two up to just be mates. And so I did. And I didn't hear anything particularly from either of you about it. And then I'm like scrolling through Instagram as we do, and I see on Wenna's Instagram that the two of you are sitting in Italy together, and I'm feeling like incredibly ripped off and jealous that I'm not there. I'm on one side, I'm like, yay, that worked. And then on the other side of it, I'm going, damn, I want to be there too.
I wish I were there. She's amazing. We have had so much fun. I think because she's also single and moved to a new city, she has the explorer bug as well. She's also in design. So it's just like a very seamless kind of trip.
It's magic. Yeah.
Because we're both business owners, so she could pick up and leave whenever she wants. I could pick up and leave whenever I want. And it's usually a design focused trip. So we'll do something that, there's always shopping involved, obviously. From a design perspective, seeing new architecture, different buildings and things like that. So she's become such a great friend of mine. And I thank you for that introduction, because we've traveled quite a bit now.
I know.
Also, we love the similar hotels. We have that little bit of snootiness about where we stay and the level in which, we're happy with in terms of a hotel. So she's great.
I would say that both of you are experience seekers, but with a luxury twist. With just enjoying experiencing not just the finer things, but just how things are put together. Like both of you look at everything in depth, and you look at the nuances. It's not just it's flashy or it's whatever. You kind of break down the depth of it into what makes it exciting or what makes it meaningful. And probably because you're both in design, and in doing that, it means that you actually deliver that back. You
I think
deliver
so.
it. Yeah, it's within you to deliver back.
It was so funny when we were in Italy together. I had rented this Airbnb, and on the photo of Airbnb, it looked beautiful. I'm like, oh, Juana will like this. I'll like this. It seems like it's in a great area right by San Marco Square, right by a few of like the great restaurants that I wanted to check out. We get there and it was disgusting. It looked nothing like the photos. There was no not that many places in Italy have
No.
air conditioning, but it was so hot in the center of this like courtyard building. Anyway, we laugh about it today, but we spent the night there miserable. And then the following morning, when it takes her massive suitcase down like 3 flights of stairs, and we go to a new hotel. So I appreciate her because I might have just stayed at the Airbnb just because, but she's like, let me sort this out. I'll figure it out. We got this. She got us a new hotel within like 20 minutes. I'm like, you're my friend. We can be friends. And then we ended up having the best time.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. It's so cool. It's so cool. So tell me, New York, how many times have you been home since you've been in London?
10 in a
10
year.
in a year.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't, I hadn't intended that. My plan was always to do maybe 6 weeks to 2 months in London
Mhm.
and then
I remember.
head back to New York based on our project scope.
Yeah.
But life threw me a little bit of a curveball this year. And so I had to be back for doctor's appointments. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. There's a clue there.
The curveball.
The curveball.
So yeah, so I spent a lot of time in New York this year, and this is part of the reason why I signed a lease for another year in London, because I just felt like I didn't get enough time here last year to really get this business up and running. And
Hmm.
I think looking back now, I really feel like there was a reason why nothing really came to fruition as quickly as I wanted it to here. When I first started the business in 2018, I had 12 clients within like the first 6 or 7 months. It was like a snowball. Things were just coming my way. I couldn't walk through doors fast enough in New York. And so when I came to London, I thought the same thing was going to happen. I'm going to land here, say, ta-da, Kristina's here. I'm ready to decide.
Krista, I'm here. I'm here.
I'm
Honey, I'm
here.
home.
And I thought these projects were just going to start flying into my lap. And, it's really incredible how the universe has such an effect on your path. And I think and we'll get into why I didn't take on projects, but I think had I started taking on some of the projects that I was dabbling with in, March, April, I
Hmm.
wouldn't have been able to complete them because of my health. So
Mm.
there's been an interesting journey throughout the last 8 or 9 months or so. And it's gotten me to a place where I think there's a dramatic shift ahead, or not even ahead. I think I'm
I
experiencing
think you're in the dramatic shift.
I'm in the dramatic shift. I definitely am. So
So I've got a question before we tell all. Why
let's
didn't
not.
you just hightail it back to New York and say, I'm home?
So interesting question. And I thought about that because I'm being treated in New York.
Hmm.
When I first got to London, I was annoyed at the slow pace because I'm a New Yorker, I'm a hustler. I get up, I do my thing, I get my coffee in the morning, I'm running from place to place. And I always felt such fulfillment and satisfaction from that pace and that
From that
hustle,
busyness.
the
Yeah.
busyness. And then when I got to London, I was kind of like, oh, no one works really here. I mean, people work here, but it's very much work-life balance is different. And I remember being like, oh, I just want to go back to New York where the energy is great and restaurants stay open past 9 o'clock and there's a vibrancy. But I
Mm.
realized really quickly as I started feeling really exhausted and tired, and the reason for it, I realized that London became a really healing, peaceful, quiet oasis for me. And I would go home to New York for our treatment
Yeah.
and to see my doctors. And I would remember feeling like, oh my gosh, it's just too much. I need to like close myself into a room for a few minutes just to get some like peace and quiet
Wow.
and stillness. And so then I'd fly back to London, walk into my flat, and I would feel this sense of like I took a deep breath and I just felt, this is what I need. This is
Yeah.
exactly what I need in this moment.
Probably so much less expectation on you in London. It's self and other
That's
and
also
outside.
hard. And I talked about, I recently wrote a piece for Thrive, which is one of Ariana Huffington's publications. And
Mm-hmm.
part of that article was very much about the feeling of guilt that came along with this slower pace and the lack of expectation that there is here in London. Because I feel like I've built my whole life on the fact that the more that I do, the more productive that I am, the better I am. And I would give myself validation through the projects that I would complete, or, how much I'm doing in one day. And when I got here and I actually was able to sit and breathe, I had this moment of, oh gosh, this doesn't feel right at all. I would go to bed at night feeling so guilty that I had done nothing, but my body was craving this rest.
Mm.
So it was an interesting journey that I've experienced over the last few months, just trying to kind of acclimate to my new environment. But I'm finding that I'm craving London more than I crave New York now, which is bizarre. I never thought
Mm.
I'd say that.
It's fascinating, like we were saying before, that before we started recording, only a couple of years ago, we were having a gratitude story. So for all the listeners, I was saying, like, when I was in my early 20s, I was living in London, and I was a New Zealander living in London. And I had a moment where I was like, being really judgy about somebody and just going, what are they so damn happy about? And then I had to kick myself in the ass and say, well, what are you so unhappy about? And I had nothing to be unhappy about. I was just, I don't know, just lacking gratitude. And
Yeah.
it was a big shift for me. And I'd been in London several months at the time, and I was, like, not pro London at all. I'd come from America, which probably didn't help because I was very pro America. And then, it was these bloody British people and da 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 da. And
With all the rules and
oh, yeah, and just their, stiff upper lip and I don't know, whatever it was, whatever everything it was. And anyway, I gave myself this, person who I've never met gave me a kick in the ass, and then I that gave me a permission to really kick myself. And from that day on, I've probably practiced every day some form of gratitude because of it. And we were just saying, like for you, that was only a couple of years ago. And I think I slip in and out of that gratitude state all too often. So it's a daily practice. But you did that only really a year before you went to London or
yeah,
thereabouts.
well, what I was saying was is that I've always been this happy, positive person. I could spin positivity on anything. I spill a glass of, the other day I spilled coffee all over my table and I'm like, oh God, this really sucks. But like you find a positive about it. You have to go
Yeah,
out. And I ended up going out to get another cup of coffee and I ended up bumping into a friend. So, and then we had this
beautiful.
great, so I always feel like when something negative happens, there's a reason for it and that you could spin it into a positive in any way. That has been built inside of me in my core since I was a child. My mom can attest to that. I've always been the think good things and good things will happen kind of gal.
Uh-huh.
But, in the hustle of New York and business taking over your everyday life, I think you don't necessarily practice gratitude on a daily basis. And what I was saying was, I had booked a trip to Bali in October of 2022, right before I ended up moving to London.
Mm.
And I had asked this local because everybody there, the locals just seemed so happy, and not just because they had smiles on their faces, because you could feel the
No,
energy, you could
it's
hear
like an
them.
inner happiness. Yeah.
It's an inner happiness, and I had asked him. I said, "So, how do you stay so happy every day?" Like, because it's a third world country, so they don't have much there. They're living
Mm.
with in squalor in a lot of these places, and they just all are happy with what they have in front of them. And the gentleman said back, he's like, I choose happiness every day. And I thought that that was such an incredible saying, and that's resonated with me now for the last year, choose happiness every day. Even when there's things that are happening that are not to your liking, you can choose to be happy about it. I mean, even through, I'll talk about my diagnosis, but even through my health scare this year, I've always said there's a reason for it. I was never like, oh, why me? It was always kind of like, what is the positive takeaway here? What is the growth opportunity here? And I think that choose happiness that I had learned in Bali was very much woven throughout this experience in the last year, because you can get yourself into a hole. You can be like, oh, this is my destiny, my path, I'm going to die. You can't get into that mindset.
No. Well, you can, but if you do, then it's a for self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
And you become sad and miserable.
Yeah.
And
And I
then
knew if I had become sad and miserable, I don't think I would have been able to heal as quickly as I have healed. You know, my doctor has said to me thus far that my results so far are unprecedented. And I attribute that to the fact that from the second I got my diagnosis, I was saying, you know, I'm going to live. I'll be fine. This is just a little blip. Course correction. I kept calling it a course correction. That actually was going to be the title of my essay. I ended up changing it at the last minute, but I keep calling this whole thing a course correction in life. You know, it's you're given two roads to go down. And I think I ended up taking the road that was a little bit more precarious, because I think my soul needed those lessons. And there were lessons woven throughout this whole experience for me, good and bad and hard and really fulfilling at the end of the day. So
I certainly think that because of your attitude, it certainly made you a richer person. And, you know, I remember when we were chatting online and you sent me the article, and I remember looking and going, oh, shit, I've got to read all that. Okay. So being dyslexic, the minute I see a long lot of text, I'm like, oh,
it's
really?
a
I've got to
lot.
read all that?
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
When I wrote it, I was thinking, how do I keep people's attention here?
It was well done because it kept my attention. And not only that, it was honest, and it was, you know, the rawness of it, as well as I suppose the positive of it. And I think at that,
Right.
you know, at that moment, I was like, wow. And I remember from our first podcast, just being caught up with your vivaciousness and energy, like you know, this, I can imagine when you're working with a client, you could almost sweep them away because, you know, like you can carry so much energy and so much joy with how the passion just comes out, you know, like for life and for design and for the way things can be. And it was one of those things that when I came away from doing the last podcast with you, I was like, oh, that was so cool. That,
Yeah.
you know, I think back to some old Zig Ziglar stuff. I don't know whether you know who Zig Ziglar was, but you can look him up. But Zig Ziglar,
I do
yeah.
know Zig Ziglar, actually. Yeah.
And he would talk about somebody being a keeper. And it's so funny, you know, like out of, I don't know how many episodes, a couple of hundred episodes, there's keepers. And there's other people that are great people. I really enjoyed the conversations. But, you know, that might be the only one we ever have.
Right.
But then, you know, like you're one of the keepers. You're one of those people that the energy is like, I mean, I'm the one who's getting the gift. You're giving it to me, the energy I get from you. So it's just really interesting in that manner, like how it ignites, you know, you ignite people. Your energy is infectious. And well, you're welcome. And thank you, because you give it out.
Well, I had a friend read my article before it was published, and he said to me, he's like, Kristina, I don't want to hear the fluff, the positivity and all of this. I want to hear how it was really hard for you and you struggled, and you know, there were sleepless nights and you were anxious and this and that. And I said to him, and this is God honest truth, I said to him, there was maybe one night that I felt anxious. One night in the last 9 months, because I think when you go through something, and I think that is a testament to my positivity, because there wasn't much for me to write about. Woe is me. I woke, yes, there was exhaustion associated with it. Yes, my whole life has been kind of up in the ground, and I don't know where the pieces are going to fall now. But it was a positive article, because there's nothing but positivity that I see in this experience. And he just couldn't wrap his head around that. And I was taking offense to it in a minute. I'm like, well, why couldn't I feel these like moments of sadness or insecurity or whatever it was? And I think back to my leader in Bali, and I chose in that moment happiness and positivity and the knowing that I will be okay. I chose it. Yeah. So I didn't have a lot of feelings of why me. This is not a sob story that I want to tell. It's a story of inner strength.
100%.
Yeah, so that
100%. So tell me this: you're in London, and you were running out of energy, and that would be noticeable in a person like you, because of the fact that you are so energetic and so busily driven.
Yeah.
And you're getting tired, and you're going, something's not right. And then what happened next?
So, it was an exhaustion that I had not felt before. Usually if I have a busy day and I'm tired, I'll go to sleep early, wake up the next morning and feel okay. It wasn't like a flu bug. I took a COVID test. It wasn't COVID. It was an exhaustion that I couldn't quite compare to anything. And with that exhaustion, for the first time, I started feeling depressed. And I couldn't pinpoint what this depression was from. Was it because of my lack of ambition that I was feeling at the time? But the ambition was associated with this exhaustion that I was feeling. Like, there were days where I would get up, I would go for my like daily bar class.
Yep.
And I would come home after this hour of exercise and feel absolutely spent, but I didn't feel sick. I just felt exhausted. So I'm like, all right, maybe it's my vitamin D because of the lack of sun in London. Maybe I'm vitamin deficient. What is the saying? Seasonal depression. So I went to go have a blood test taken in London just to kind of see what vitamins I'm deficient in and if I could have a supplement here or there. Yeah. In that time frame, I cut out alcohol because I was drinking a lot, more so than I was drinking in New York, because I was meeting new friends, and every night of the week I had fun plans and, a dirty martini to start. And a bottle. So I cut out and I started working out. I started, drinking a lot of water, and I actually felt a little bit better. It was March, so it was the sun was starting to come out a bit more here. Spring was on the horizon.
But your spring wasn't on the horizon.
Right.
Your spring wasn't.
Spring was springing. So I went to the doctor here in London to get a blood test. And the doctor calls me a few days later and says, your test results have come back a little bit wonky, but I feel like it's just a fluke in the lab. You seem like, this is what he said, you seem like a really healthy individual. He asked me when I had my last blood test, and it was a year ago. And I said, my last blood test was normal. And and I don't mean to judge the Brits and how their healthcare system runs. I went privately for this, so I paid out of pocket for the blood test. But he basically was like, keep calm, carry on. When you're home in New York, get a repeat blood test. And at the time, because I wasn't drinking anymore, I was starting to drink a lot more water, I felt better. So when I was in New York a few weeks later, I wasn't even planning on getting another blood test because I started feeling energized again.
Right.
I get chills when I think about this moment, because I ended up getting a text message while I was in New York from my GP that
in London. Oh no, in New York.
No, when I was in New York.
Yeah.
And the text message, it was an automated text message that said, "It's time for your annual well visit. Click here now." And I clicked through the link, and called them right away. I said, I'm here in New York for the next 2 weeks. Is there any way that you could squeeze me in? And she said, actually, we have a cancellation on Thursday. Can you pop in then? And it ended up working out perfectly. So I went in for my annual physical. This is a testament that you have to be the CEO of your own health. And if something feels wrong, really address it. And I think in that moment, because I believe in my angels and I believe in the universe kind of guiding you, I believe in that moment, my angels were probably like, this girl, she thinks she's fine now, gallivanting all over the world again. We have to set things straight. So I get this automatic text message, go in for the appointment. A week later, fly back to London. And the GP calls me and I knew within seconds of her call on the televisit.
I just got the chills then. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And I didn't even ask her, is it cancer? I just knew it. I just knew it. And so she said that I needed to see a hematologist. And then the process of, do I stay in London for this? Do I go home to New York to be treated and so on? And I sought out a few doctors in the UK, and the process here is a little bit antiquated. And I wasn't going to be able to get an appointment for 6 weeks to see a GP here. And then that GP would have had to refer me to a specialist. It would have been like a 3-month process, even if I went privately.
Yes.
Not the NHS.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go through the NHS because I'm not a citizen here. I'm still considered a tourist.
Yeah, right.
So I made the decision to go back to New York. I was connected with this brilliant doctor at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I sent over my test results, and he basically, connected me within 10 minutes and said, how quickly can you fly back to New York? Now, mind you, I was in London for 3 days, and 2 days later, I was on a flight back to New York. And so then that Monday, I went in for my slew of tests. They tested every organ in my body, blood tests. I had to have a horrific bone marrow biopsy, which in that moment, I was like, choose happiness. Choose happiness.
More happiness, please.
Just it'll be okay.
Wind the happiness dial a little harder, please, because I'm not doing it well myself.
Yeah. The nurse said to me, she's like, she actually praised me while I was in the operating room because you're awake for the whole process. And she said, girl, you are strong. And I said, I know I'm strong. She said, I've had grown men on this table whining like crazy.
I can imagine. I'd be one of them. Yeah. Grown men whining.
So I went through this slew of tests, which probably was one of the hardest days, I would say, because, I didn't have a formal diagnosis then. I knew something was wrong. The doctor had said to me before I even came in for the testing, I just want to prepare you for, we're testing for leukemia. And so I went in on Monday, Tuesday. By Wednesday, I had a formal diagnosis. And by Friday, I had started treatment. And so it was like so fast. And I think if I had stayed in the UK, it would have been like 3 months drawn out. Who knows how my cancer cells would have
accelerated and multiplied. Yeah.
So I feel so fortunate that I flew back to New York. And then I ended up staying in New York for about a month because once I started the treatment, I was exhausted. And some of the side effects were not great. I was with my family. I had my family support. So I was home for just about a month and then flew back to London. And I remember walking into my London flat and being like, oh, I feel so good. I felt so good to be in my own bed. So good to just like be in my space that I've kind of curated this like really happy healing home. And then I was back in New York 2 weeks later, so I kept going back and forth, which was my choice. But I knew that I needed to have that balance because if I stayed in New York, and I keep thinking, had I gotten leukemia while I was in New York, I don't think I would have ever slowed down and given myself the opportunity to heal. Because I would have just thrown myself into work.
I honestly think that you would have, the serendipity of being in London, having been in Bali, and, just all this sort of journey, and then taking your treatment in New York, but being able to have the perception and that distance to realize that it's so important that you focused on the you in this, and then also being situationally aware. Like you said, you got back into your own place and you were like, I can breathe here. This is like, whereas in New York, I don't know what the expectation would have been, but you probably, those feelings like you were saying about when you wrote the Thrive article around guilt and stuff would have come way, way up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There was a lot of guilt that I had to deal with here because I was starting a business here, and I think I'm such a doer and a go-getter that really affected me. But as I wrote in the Thrive article, I started taking these daily walks that were transformative, I feel like, because it felt like I was doing something and that was enough for the day. You know, it was something that I was doing for my health and well-being, and that became sort of the catalyst to overcoming the sense of guilt. So I labeled what I was doing as something. I
Right.
labeled
It
the
became
walk
a,
as something for that day.
yeah,
My time where I was just sitting with sunshine on my face, that was a something that I was proud of. You can kind of change your mind, and it doesn't always have to be I've made, $100,000 in the month to say
yeah,
I've done something. It
yeah.
could be as simple as reading 5 pages in a book, or taking that moment of stillness or silence. Like that's enough. And it's enough. It's enough for right now, at least. And it has to be enough for right now because I think that had it not been enough, I don't think I would have healed as quickly.
Oh, it's an interesting thought there, like that just went through my head. The word capacity came up in my head, and I was like, so here's this, amazing human who has massive capacity and drive and fulfills your capacity, to the brink, to overflow it if you could.
I
And
could.
to actually accept that, these are probably some of your quietest moments ever, other than being a child or maybe on a holiday. And even on a holiday, you would have been far more looking for the entertainment.
Always.
To be able to slow down that much and to be able to give yourself the permission and the gratitude and the self-love to be able to go, okay, well, I'll label, sitting with the sun on my face as a point of value. Personally, I think there's an amazing takeaway for every listener that you don't have to get a leukemia diagnosis to allow yourself to capture life's moments and
Right.
nurture yourself. And your life is intrinsically changed because you will always nurture yourself from here forward. I'd like to thank Stetson Hats Australia for providing my amazing collection of open road Stetson hats. Since 1865, John B. Stetson has been crafting legendary headwear, adorning the heads of Western icons like Annie Oakley and George Custer. The open road hat debuted in 1937, beloved by artists, outlaws, presidents alike. Its timeless style fits the setting from city streets to open plains. Whether in the cab of a truck or my trusty Mini Cooper, the open road is all style. If you think hats aren't for you, you just haven't found the right one yet. Discover yours at stetsonaustralia.com or stetson.com if you're in the USA. Thanks, Stetson, for your support. Please share your Stetson moment by emailing me your photo to talkdesign@gmail.com. Let's celebrate the timeless allure of Stetson together. And where busyness was your last nurturer.
Busyness was my last nurturer. You're absolutely right. It's interesting that you say that because I would feel good when I did a lot of things in the day. I would allow myself to sleep and feel like I deserved that sleep at night only when I've tackled so much in my day. And I do think that this will resonate with many. Like I think of a lot of my friends who are stay-at-home moms or working moms who are juggling a million things and they're trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Hmm.
And they have to do X, Y, and Z to feel like they're a good mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
You feel good within your heart and you give a lot of love. I almost feel like that's enough. You don't need to be giving them the latest toy or whatever it is, or, offering them
Yeah.
8,000 in one day, you know? So we put too much pressure on ourselves to be the best and then share the best that we're doing. And it's exhausting.
It is, and it's probably unsustainable. One of the other things that, came to me when you were saying that then before, I was like, there's this old saying, you can't give what you don't have. Are you a Wayne Dyer fan? Do you know Wayne Dyer?
I know
So,
Wayne Dyer, but
yeah.
I can't
So
call any.
Dr. Wayne Dyer, I mean, he's dead now, but his work obviously will go on for many years. He used to say that, and some of the things I'd be listening to, where is you can't give what you don't have. And I think that as a human, one of the gifts that I can see is you've always been able to give energy and vitality and drive. You've been able to, project that, and it inspires people. And maybe you weren't at that point able to give stillness and calmness and a different confidence, not this confidence, that not the just the outward confidence, but that real inward confidence. It's going to be really fun to see the next year and then the next year and what that transpires into, because whilst this year has been a lot of inward looking and inward healing and doing that, the innate drive and energy of you is to give. And I can imagine, we've got this lovely shift in the world, probably accelerated by COVID, but I actually believe it was there before. And look, before COVID, I would often be talking about, the rise of female energy and things like that. And, not the killing of the masculine energy, just the rise of the female energy and feminine energy. And, woman of strength. And I use strength rather than power, like it's strength. It's like it's innate. And you have all these elements and they're part of who you are. And then we've got this move of wellness and awareness of wellness and self-wellness, that I think the mental health sides of COVID and isolation and all these things have accelerated the people's yearning and looking for that. And then when you're a designer, this affects the way you see everything and the way you give everything.
Does. And I think as a designer now, I'm looking at my designs in a different way. I mean, I feel like in New York, I was always the designer that outside New York City is always so hustle bustle, where my interiors need to feel calm and serene. And I don't incorporate a lot of color in my designs. Like, I mean, you can see behind me. I like a very neutral palette. And I think that's because there was always so much going on in my brain that I needed a neutral palette in my environment. But I do think that that's attributed to my wellness and healing in a major way. I think that, and I felt that when I would come back to London and I would, I live near a park. I think that's another thing, bringing the outside in and bringing nature very much a part of your everyday life. In New York, I don't have nature. I don't have a park nearby me. I would run down by the Hudson River, but that to me wasn't necessarily nature. Yes, you'd be by a body of water, but you're not surrounded by these, ancient trees.
Yeah.
And
By hundreds of years old oak trees
yes,
everywhere. And
they have energy. And I would go for these walks and feel when I got back to my flat completely energized. It was almost as if I was a phone being put on a charger pad. That's how it
I
felt.
love that. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have that in New York, So I think being here and living in Kensington and having this very healing home has been transformative in my design eye now. So I think when I do design a space that's not necessarily near a park, let's think a la New York, I think I'm going to be incorporating more elements of nature into my programming.
So a lot
I
more
think,
biophilic design, and even I imagine biomimicry, where you start to play with things from nature.
yeah,
I went to a house that we were shooting on the TV show, and they had used a limestone on the outside cladding of part of the house, and it was cut like corduroy almost, but it was uneven in that. And
okay.
then they'd actually had the limestone cut into different sizes because it had to go around the end of a curved wall as well, but just into different strips and sizes. So it was really subtle, but it was beautifully organic. And I remember when I walked up to the front of the house, just having to put my hand on it and having this little thought, that's going to become a dirty spot because everybody's going to want to do what I did. But it was sort of like when you go to a house and it's, raw timber. It was like a whole nother level of engagement. And I remember at that moment just stopping and putting my hand on it and taking a breath and just feeling it. And I'm thinking of, like this, it was ripples of sand on a beach almost. And
Yeah.
that was what went through my mind at the time. And I
Well,
was like,
stone has healing properties as well.
yeah.
Natural stone and wood.
Mm,
But yeah, I think my designs are headed more natural woods, stone, marbles, travertines, kind of. I mean, it's always been what I've gravitated towards. And I think now I'm wondering, why is it that I've gravitated towards that overall look and feel? And I think
yes.
it's because it brings energy into a space and you don't even realize it. It's not a piece of plywood,
Yeah.
it's some history.
It
So
it carries a weight, and it carries an honesty and an authenticity.
yeah. I think when we first chatted, we were talking a lot about my affinity for vintage furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has a lot to do with it as well, just kind of like talking this out in my head. I gravitate towards pieces when I'm shopping for vintage furniture, I'll gravitate towards pieces that give me a beautiful sense of energy. They don't have to necessarily look amazing, they usually do. But if something feels like it has a history that's seeped in something that has a beautiful light around it, I'll
Mm-hmm.
gravitate towards
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable kind of like thing as well, is like everything, I believe, everything embodies an energy. If it's useful, like to somebody, it embodies an energy. People, so a bit like talking to the plants kind of thing, but like even just, like the things that you have around you, if they make your life easier and they make your life gentler, then there's, I don't know, like I want to say an intrinsic love that you create with them. And I've always said to my kid, I remember the first time, somebody gave us some clothes, like they said, oh, well, your daughter might really like these. And they were like secondhand clothes. And there was one part that went through my mind that went, oh, hand-me-downs. And then there was this next piece when my daughter was like, oh, wow. And I went, she was so impressed with the piece of clothing because of who it was from.
gave it to her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I went, and the mother had said, oh, this was a real favorite. This is a real favorite of hers, like that she's grown out of it. So would you like it, kind of thing. And I remember sitting with my daughter and saying, how amazing, you get to fill this with love now that she's filled it with love.
Yeah, it's
And
amazing.
it's your opportunity. And that has stuck in our family kind of thing ever since. And even when we pass on clothes to other kids, we will be like, these things were loved.
So
These
well,
things were, yeah. Yeah. You're not just
yeah,
getting a piece of clothing, you're getting something that was loved. And, in design, certainly in, the built structured design, I'm always looking for ways that I can cue those elements and pieces of the individual, of their journey in life,
So I would do a lot of reading. I started writing a journal, but not in the sense that I would, write a journal at the end of each day or pick it up in the morning. I had a note section on my phone, and anytime I would have a thought, I would kind of get immersed in this thought and just elaborate on it. So I developed these pages and pages in my notes, my phone, like whether I was on the tube or whether I was sitting in the park or, waiting for my coffee, I would have a thought and then I would take like 20 minutes or so and actually elaborate on it. Like, who has time to do that? Then I just, yeah, a luxury. It was such a luxury. I mean, that's why I say this whole thing has been such a blessing because I've gotten to experience things I normally wouldn't have experienced. So from these journals, I was like, you know what? I feel as though I have something to share. And I compiled these journals into a little bit of an essay and sent it over to a few friends, and a friend of mine knows Ariane Huffington and the team there, and they decided to publish it, which I was a little bit shocked about, but excited that I was going to finally be able to tell my story.
Yeah.
And it's something now that I incorporate into my everyday. Like, I will sit down and just write my random thoughts out. And then I'll take some time to consolidate the thoughts and really, form them into something that people would want to read. So I've been doing a lot of writing, and I don't know what this will lead to. If anything, it's just been a healing creative outlet for me.
Mm.
But maybe there's another essay coming down the line for me. I do think now, from a design perspective, I want to incorporate wellness and healing into design in some capacity. I have this dream because of my treatment. I was going through formal medication, but at the same time I was going for acupuncture and infrared treatments, and I would do these like float tanks. So all things that went
Oh.
holistically alongside with my treatment plan. And I was going here, there, and everywhere for all of these different treatments. And in my brain, I'm thinking, oh, how nice would it be to have one space that holds all of these holistic measures for someone going through something similar to me. And I think, and even if you're not going through cancer treatment, I do think that it could be wonderful for all. But I think of what that design would look like, an acupuncture studio mixed with yoga, mixed with meditation, mixed with infrared, mixed with all of the things that you want to do to keep your body in tip-top shape, what that
Mm.
studio would look like and where that could be. So that's sort of what I'm manifesting right now.
I
The
love it.
opportunity to bring my journey into a space that just exudes positive, optimistic energy.
Yeah, like I'm with you. I'm with you. I think that we're seeing a growth in what we would call luxury spa. And a lot of those are about treatments that are maybe, I want to say relaxation treatments, maybe more than anything. They take the edge off treatments. But when
Yeah.
you're talking to me about that, it reminded me of a conversation I had with Rick Joy, the architect in America, and he did a resort out in the desert. And he was saying to me, one of his favorite things was to lie in the bottom of a canyon and because it restricts the sky. And then also at night, it restricts the sky. So when you look up, the sky's only this piece because the walls of the canyon shape it. And so on the roof of the resort, he made all the rooftops so that you could sleep outside up there as well. It's in the desert. And that they were like the canyon walls. And so it restricts that moment to this. It sort of focuses you in and gives you the feeling of security because of the other on the side. That, the sides that, and they're black, they're dark, they've disappeared at night. And when you were saying that, I was thinking of Rick's place, and it's one of, go back to that thing of the adventure and the experience, but it's not at an accelerated, it's at I don't want to say decelerated, but maybe it isn't decelerated. I don't know. It's at a breathable pace, like it's very mindful.
I love that. A breathable pace. This is what we
Mm.
all need. We're all
Mm.
striving for, I don't know what. What are we striving for? We are born and we all die at the end of the day.
Yep,
We
that's
would get to
inevitable.
highest versions of ourselves. But I think with that, we need to make room for stillness and
Mm-hmm.
self-love and
Mm-hmm.
healing. And I think all of us could use a little healing after COVID, whether you had it or not, or whether you experienced someone that passed away or not. I think that was a traumatic experience for many people. And I don't think that there's enough healing that's happened since then. I think we've thrown ourselves back into the go, go, go. And where is that moment to kind of say, let's just take a breather, take a minute?
Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly interesting that, you say that. I was in COVID, I was extremely blessed to live where I live.
Yeah.
We had lockdowns and things like that, but our lockdowns meant that every morning I went to the beach, and
Yeah.
I could walk with my wife if I wanted, but I could also just throw my board in the water and go surfing. And
Yeah.
so there was nobody pulling on me to be at the office or to do these things. And so I would every morning, we would get up and we would go down the beach, and my wife would often just go for a walk, and then I would go for a surf, and I'd be, probably an hour and she'd be an hour on her walk, and then we'd kind of regroup. There was
Oh,
nothing
what a
open.
gorgeous morning.
I know there was nothing open. There was nothing that you could go and do. You couldn't go to a cafe. You couldn't do any of those things, and you couldn't be with more than one person. It had to be a family member kind of thing. And so some mornings we'd take our girls as well. And since just pre-Christmas, I made a real thing where I went, you know what, I've been so busy. And I'm probably a lot like you in the fact that I look at how much I'm achieving as my worth. And so, like, you know, a minimum of 3 mornings a week, I start at 5 a.m. And that's either at work or on a podcast or on a coaching call or one of those things, with my buddy group from all around the world. And then I go surfing on the other mornings if I can. And, like, I'll give you the example. Saturday morning, I was in the water just past 5 a.m. and I got out of the water at 6:30, and I got changed in the car and drove and played pickleball for 2 hours. And then after pickleball, I went, should really while I've got time, go to the gym. And so I went and did a workout at the gym and had a sauna. And it was sort of like about 11:30 or something. And I was like, okay, I've done a lot this morning. I've packed a bit in.
Did you go back to bed? I hope you took a nap.
No, I
No.
didn't. It was so funny. I got home and I was like, and Becky was doing some things. And so I kind of just mucked around for a little bit. And then my daughter said to me, hey, Dad, will you take me shopping? I need to get these things. So I'm like, yeah, for sure. Let's go, like. And then that night I came home and there was just us at home and made dinner and hung out and all the rest. And it was like, I have lots of days where they're that full. But that
Yeah.
day was all about just the first part of it, like the first probably, I don't know, 8 hours or something was just about me. It was,
Yeah.
I wasn't.
When you're surfing, you're meditating, whether you believe it or not.
No, I do. That's one of the things that I love about surfing. You can go out there with the wrong mindset, but you can't escape what the ocean can give you. And
Yeah.
if
What a
you're ready to
beautiful life.
receive.
Yeah, you're very lucky that you're in nature because was lucky enough this summer to do a lot of traveling to the Mediterranean
I
and just
saw that
float.
on Instagram just quietly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was
So,
going to ask you, because you said before about, using a float tank as part of your holistic side of healing. And funnily enough, my wife, she's torn I don't even know what she's done to tell you the truth, but torn some muscle in her shoulder and been in absolute agony, like nerve pain from her back and all this kind of stuff. And that's been going on for 5 weeks. And she went and she has tried everything, that you could imagine, from doctors to, healers to all kinds of things. And she's she's a business coach, and she's a trained mindfulness coach, but she doesn't She doesn't teach. She
Wow.
doesn't train other people. She just uses it with her coaching, yeah, and mindfulness and yoga and all those kinds of things. Anyway, she had said to me, I think I'm going to try a float. And we'd tried them before, we'd had them before. And I said, yeah, for sure. I said, actually, one of my team members gave me a voucher for some float sessions as a gift for helping them with something. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I said, take that and go and give it a try. And she has been in the float tank, and she is on the road to recovery. I would have told you if we'd had this conversation last week at this time, I'd have gone,
Yeah.
we're donkey deep and no idea where we're going. And she tried the float on maybe Thursday or Friday last week and over the weekend. And she started going and seeing this holistic chiropractor and those things, and her mindfulness of now knowing what she was trying to deal with and having more specifics around it, what emotions she was holding on to. She lost her father this year, those kinds of things, what all these things had built up to be. And so it's been such a really interesting thing, to see her get it in her mind now. Okay, I know what I've got to heal. I know what my mind needs to work on. I know where, not just work on, but like I know where my mindfulness needs to be focused. And then my wellness needs to be focused around maintaining movement, but not stretching it or straining it. I should say not stretching, but stretching it, but not straining it. And then the emotional side of letting go. And she was saying to me, the float is heavenly because of the fact that she is suspended and there is no weight against anything, and that movement
Also,
is
for
easier.
well, it gets rid of inflammation in your body.
Mm.
Salt. She should also try lymphatic drainage because that's really helped
I,
me as well.
I've got a funny feeling she has, but I will check.
Check and see. But
Yeah.
in terms of like the mindfulness and healing the trauma that she experienced, it's something that I've really like, took a deep dive in this year and understanding how I can maybe heal myself from the inside out alongside these drugs in a holistic way. And one of the things that I decided that I was going to do is visualize.
Uh-huh.
So I had asked my doctor if he had an animation of some kind that I could look at that he would maybe share with a child suffering from leukemia to understand what the drug that I'm taking was doing in my body when I would take it twice a day.
Right.
So he told me, he sent me this video and these little animated cancer cells and being attacked by the drug and whatnot. And I studied this video, and every time I would take that pill, I would visualize it going into my body and it being absorbed and seeing the cancer cells just like die off. And I think that's why my results have been so unprecedented, because I was doing this visualization alongside with the treatment. And I just felt, I'm like, okay, this pill is really going to attack everything and get it out of my body. And it did. It really did. So, and I'm on a clinical trial, and I'm one of the first patients that have received a remission report so far. So, really incredible.
Boom. I love it.
Yeah.
Do you know that power of that visualization? I have a friend here on the Sunshine Coast, and his name's Alan Pease. And if anybody looks up Alan Pease, they'll see that he is the world's expert on body language, and his wife, Barbara. But they have sold more books than, probably Harry Potter on that seriously big authors. And they've got lots of books on body language. And I remember talking to Alan. So Alan lives with cancer. He has cancer. And I remember talking to Alan one day. They're clients of mine and now become friends. And we were chatting, and he was saying something about, he said to me, I said I'd been for a surf that morning. And he's like, so I was at his house, and he goes, oh, God, I used to surf all the time, when I was younger, and da, 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 da. He said, so many years since I've surfed. And I said, really? I said, he come out for a bash and he said, look, I've got tumors on my bloody rib cage and all these different things. And I said, how bad is that? And he goes, well, it's fragile, like, and I said, well, so what's the story? Like, what, tell me the story of it. And he said to me, well, and I'll tell the story. It's got two parts to it, but one of them was, he said, well, having a great mindset is like having money in the bank. And I was like,
Yeah.
what's he talking about? And he's like, well, if you've got $1 million in the bank and you get a $10,000 problem, is it a problem? I'm like, no. He said, you get $100,000. Is it a problem? No, it's no problem. If you get $1 million a problem, then you've got a problem, but at least you can solve it. And I said, so how's this like having money in the bank? He said, well, it's like saving. He said, if every day you deposit into the bank of wellness and mental attitude, when something goes wrong, you can withdraw from the bank. And you can also, how to top the bank up because you've practiced it. He said, you can't save your way out of debt when you've got no money. If you've got to have the money to be able to get through, you can save money. If you've got savings and you get a problem financially, well, then you use that money. If you've got, if you've got like mental fortitude and strength and habits, then you don't have to learn them when something goes wrong. You already have them. It's money in the bank.
Yep. I love that.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah, it's the most amazing analogy I've ever heard of why we take care of ourselves.
It's so 100%. True. Also, because I had 40 years of this mindset under my belt. So when I got leukemia, I kind of knew how to tackle it. Even though I say that I didn't understand this whole concept of choosing happiness before I went to Bali, I think it's always been in me that I'm just because I guess I do choose happiness, and I guess I always have. Maybe I just never labeled
maybe
it.
Maybe not as awarely as you are now.
Right.
And it, it really shifted my mindset when he told me that story around that. And that weekend, I think it was that weekend, or it was during that week, he rings me and he goes, yeah, we'll go for a surf. And I said, how many years? And he said, I haven't been on a surfboard in like 15 years or something like that. And I said, cool. I said, I've got a board. I'll bring about 3 or 4 boards and you can choose one. And I said, let's go and catch a couple of waves. It's only like 1 to 2 foot. Let's go and see what we can find and have a bit of fun. And so we did. And it was like a really amazing experience because he was like, the fear of his rib cage being crumbled or anything like this was high, but he saw past that and then acted past that and then went for a surf and caught some waves. And it was just like he said, oh, I wouldn't do it all the time because I don't want to take the risk, but I'm so glad I took the risk.
Right. Amazing. I love that story. And is he okay right now?
Yeah, sure. He's an international speaker. He travels the world and speaks on body language and all those kinds of things. And but he's been living with it. So another part to the story was when he got diagnosed, the doctor said to him, or the oncologist said to him, like 96% of people, whatever the figure is, but it was something in the 90s, don't last more than a year or so with this, Alan. And he said, all right. He said, so it's, so your chances of survival are 4% or whatever. And he goes, cool, put me in the 4%. And the doctor said to him, Alan, you can't choose that. And he said, well,
yes,
we'll see.
He said, absolutely can.
That's what he said. He said, well, we'll see. I'm going to choose it. And the doctor's like, I don't want you to go out here with false expectations and
false expectation. These doctors sometimes, and I understand medicine, thank goodness for modern medicine, but there needs to be some acknowledgement of the power of your mind, because our brains are the most formidable organs in our bodies, and we have so much power within our brain.
Well, more than we ever know. Like, I've just been listening to a fabulous pod, The Diary of a CEO, and I'm trying to think of his name. Anyway, there's one particular thing. I can't think of all their names, so sorry for all you listeners. I can't think of their names, but go and find it. And it's the guy who's the brain doctor, and he talks on ADHD and about healing your brain and all the rest. I'll send it to you. If I remember, we'll put it in the show notes. But phenomenal about, what your brain is capable of. And I'm a big fan of, I don't know whether you know Jose Silva, the Silva method of mind control, which is about using your alpha brainwaves. But I'll send you that and you can look that up as well.
Send me that too, because all I do right now is listen to podcasts and read.
Yeah. Well, you'll enjoy the Silva method. I'm sure it's been around for a very, very long time. And it's very much about what one of my fabulous clients calls manifest action, not manifestation, manifest action. So take the action and things happen. So yeah. There you go. That was an interesting podcast, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I've never really talked vocally about this kind of stuff before. So it feels good. It feels healing just talking about it.
I do. And I really think that the next part of your journey with design will be at a completely, not different level, but a shift of mindfulness. And like I love working with products where they nurture people as opposed to just products that look pretty. So like I deal with a company here called Mineral Fox that does a lot of clay-based plasters, and so internal plasters, and so they're breathing with you. These things are like that, they're part of the organic environment inside a home. And yes, they cost a bit. What they do is they deaden sound, they absorb moisture, they let the moisture back out, they do all these things. They're part of an organic system.
They're handmade. It's not like they're mass produced, manufactured in a factory. They have the love of the person that was curating it for you. So I think definitely my design aesthetic and my design intention is now going to be steered more towards items that can bring you energy, good, positive energy, whether it's a plant or whether it's a stone side table or a clay pot. Everything will be brought into my home with intention, not just because it's cheap, $5.99 at Target.
Yeah, exactly. Rather have one great piece than lots of cheap pieces. Yeah,
exactly.
So, I have one last question. In your own home, your favorite space?
My favorite space is probably this $50 or 50-pound velvet settee that I purchased on eBay. And it's funny, I have a beautiful couch behind me. I never sit on it. It's random that I sit on this couch. I'll sit on this velvet chaise lounge, and it's my favorite spot. I'll read on that chair. I will watch TV. I will just, sleep. It's my favorite spot. And it's funny, it was somebody else's. I don't know whose it was, but whoever that chair belonged to last was very calming energy.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Your favorite book right now?
So I've been reading through like crazy Lucy Foley's, all of her books. So she's very much murder mystery. I don't know. I feel like I gravitate towards those books where there's some kind of drama that happens within the first chapter, and then you have to sort of uncover the ending. So those are the books I'm really loving. I mean, I've read a ton of like self-help, self-healing.
Yeah.
But I feel like for me, listening to podcasts on healing and meditation and that kind of stuff I absorb it a bit more. When I'm reading, I need something that's a thriller.
Yeah, it's got to grab you.
Yeah, I literally blew through all 3 of her books in like a month. They were so good.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to get my daughter onto those ones.
Oh,
my eldest daughter is an absolute bookworm. And what are you watching on TV?
So I just finished that Netflix show. It's an Italian series called The Laws of Lydia Poet. And it's about one of the first Italian attorneys. And it's her journey. It takes place in 1880 where, women were not allowed to be, in the legal field. It's fascinating. I mean, she's this fabulous go-getter girl boss in the 1800s. So that's been really fun. And it has like a little bit of a mystery spin to it.
Ooh.
But yeah, so that I just finished. I love like that, it's interesting. I'm really gravitating more towards a lot of these international shows. They all have subtitles, but I feel like they have some more depth.
Do you know something that this strikes me with the younger generation is both my daughters are quite happy to watch a show with subtitles and the
Yeah.
sound reasonably low. And I think it's because this thing of on our social media, we can watch reels and the text will be there. We don't have to disturb anybody. I hate it because I can't stand it because of the fact that I'm dyslexic, so I'm not a fast enough reader to keep up. And I'm like,
it is.
I can't watch the TV and read the thing.
Your eyes acclimate though. And I'm in the midst of learning Italian. So it's nice that I'm able to watch a show in Italian. So sometimes I don't even need to really use the subtitles, which is great. As I get stronger and learning how to speak Italian, it becomes more. So I feel like it's a good way for me to exercise my talent in speaking, although I can't say I'm very good yet.
That's so awesome. So awesome. I want to thank you so much for you making the time.
Thank you for having me.
And for sharing so authentically and honestly. I think your journey will mean an awful lot to people, and they will be able to see that whatever their situation is, or the situation of somebody around them, may not be them.
Yeah.
The empathy and the inspiration you are. So thank you.
I'm excited to see what happens next. We'll keep you posted on our next one.
100%. We will be back. We will be back.
Thank you so much, Adrian. You've been wonderful. I always love chatting with you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You bet. You too. Thank you for tuning into our conversation. I hope it left you both informed and inspired. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen, and please don't hesitate to share your design thoughts with me. It's always a joy to hear from you. If you're like me and crave a deeper dive into design thinking, coupled with a love for travel and adventure, consider one of my architectural adventures. Join me and some of my wonderful design friends and embark on a journey of a lifetime. Apply for an unforgettable design experience at adrianramsey.com. With our clients spanning the globe, I firmly believe behind every great project are great people. If you're a great person and seeking to turn your dream into a reality, I'd be honored to design your home with you. Why not join the ranks of our exceptional clients and let's make your heart sing? Reach out to me at studio@ardesignhouse.com. That's studio@ardesignhouse.com, and let's get a conversation going and make your heart sing.